He won't be available again for tomorrow. He hasn't bowled yet in his recovery over the last couple of days. So having 4 days between this game and the next game, I think that'll be the ideal time to really test him out and assess him. But I think over the next 5-6 days, there'll be a call made on that, just based on what he can and can't do. We've seen him batting and running, and no problem. Just he hasn't tried to bowl yet. Just waiting for the injury to settle down a bit more. Yeah, it's tough when guys, especially all-rounders who balance out your side really well, give you that extra fast bowling option as well as a top six batter. So it's a little bit difficult trying to decide whether you go the extra batter or the extra bowler depending on conditions. So I think it does make it a little bit tougher, a bit more of a challenge, no doubt. But we also did plan for that if it did happen throughout the tournament. Before you sit down and you start planning out what happens if X, Y, Z happens. So it wasn't a total surprise. Obviously it's not ideal, but it's not a surprise to us because we'd already thought about things like that. But just game to game, it just totally changes depending on the conditions. Yeah, that's why it's here. Obviously just a couple of days before I think Australia A side land today, in the UK as well later today. So it was just a couple of days before, but as a bit of a precaution more than anything, if Stoin doesn't recover well enough over the next couple of days. So it just comes down to, short answer is yes. There is confidence that Mitch will come in and do well if selected, if Stoin doesn't recover properly. Like I said, it's really tough at a ground like Taunton being so small. I thought that the wicket would actually spin a little bit as the game went on, but it didn't. The cloud stayed over the ground, and it was a really nice wicket the whole time. After the new ball sort of wore off, so it was probably tougher at a ground like Taunton. I think here at the Oval you see there's one lot bigger side, so you can probably be a little bit more defensive with your fifth bowler as opposed to having to try and attack with him. And that's what the 4 quicks allows you to do. It gives you an opportunity to attack from one end while being defensive at the other. It was just so small, Taunton, that it's tough to even be defensive as a spinner there. Yeah, it was a little bit disappointing to leave a few out there because we saw on a ground that's so hard to defend like Taunton, once a team gets a run on it, it can be hard to stop regardless of who's playing. And I think we just looked to go a little bit too hard too soon. After the start that we had, I think we probably forced it a little bit too much and probably left it to somebody else. We thought that somebody else was going to do the job, but at the same time we still got ourselves into a great position. We got guys a little bit of time in the middle that allowed them to get the feel of the game and get a bit of a flow into the World Cup, particularly Sean, who hadn't played, Sean Marsh, who hadn't played a game, to come in and get some time in the middle. Would have been great if he spent a bit more time there and took the game a bit deeper, but when you're playing 7 batters, that's probably the risk versus reward. I think if that comes off, then you do get that huge total. But at the same time, I was probably just a little bit disappointed that we failed to learn throughout the innings. There was times, looked like every time we tried to hit it down the ground, a big shot down the ground in the air, it went straight up. So a couple of guys still made that same mistake after a few guys before them had as well. So that was a bit disappointing. But all in all, I thought that the position that we got ourselves into was a really positive one. And with Maxi, again, that's just a call you make on the day. It's not, we'd love Max at about 15, 20, 25 overs, but he also doesn't have to play the high risk innings. And we saw the other day he come in and had a really big impact quickly. If that can go on for a bit longer, great. Whether that's from the 35th over, from the 20th over, that's just a game by game. And that was my decision to send him in and probably just probably didn't make the right call on how tough the wicket was to walk in and really up the ante. So that was my bad mistake. Especially after being out there for 20 overs, it was probably a wicket that we could have built for a little bit longer and tried to have maximum impact right at the end rather than maximum impact for 25 overs. Yeah, it's not ideal, is it, when rain plays a big part in a tournament like this? I think Sri Lanka have been unlucky with the couple of games that they've had washed out. So you look down their side and there's a lot of experience there. There's a lot of world-class players. So you can never take any team in this competition lightly. But I think the fact that we've been playing consistently, basically every 3 days for the last 2 weeks last week and a half has been really positive. That we're in cricket mode at the moment. We just play, travel, which gives you a good opportunity just to keep the flow going, and we get an extra day between this and the next game, and then it slows down a little bit towards the back end of the tournament. So while some of our boys no doubt would be after a bit of a rest and a recharge of the batteries, because it can wear you down travelling a lot, travel, train, play all the time. So I think that it's good though that when you're in that phase of the tournament, you're just playing all the time. So Sri Lanka, they're going to be a very tough opposition, no doubt.